My name is Emma Clifford and I am the Director of Animal Balance. Animal Balance is a non-profit organisation that I started 14 years ago. I started Animal Balance because I found out that the cats and dogs were being poisoned on the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. What was happening is the authorities were putting a substance called compound 1080, which is actually a rat poison, into meat and putting this on the side of the road. What would happen is the dogs or the cats could come along and eat this and die a horrible death. It would take 2 or 3 days for them to die. On top of that, the native species could also eat the same substance and die. In the Galapagos at that time, the streets were made of sand, so often the children would play in the streets and they could also be exposed to this poison. So it's literally a time bomb waiting to happen. So we started talking to the Galapagos National Park Service about offering a free spay and neuter clinic for the cats and dogs of the Galapagos Islands. There's actually 4 islands that have cats, dogs and humans, and so we wanted to target these 4 islands with a humane animal management program. And the way that we did that was we presented that we would come to the Galapagos and offer these services for free to the community. Well, the Galapagos National Park Service said no, and they said no for a whole year. But what happened on the Galapagos at that time, and that was around 2003-2004, was that there was a lot of social unrest in the community. The fisher folk who lived there had basically been told to reduce their fishing quotas and where they fished and who they fished for. They were shark finning and collecting sea cucumbers and making quite a lot of money from those activities. Those activities are illegal, so the authorities were trying to close those activities down. And at the same time, the local people wanted to continue because they were making quite a lot of money from it, quite honestly. So it got to the point where the local people, the fishermen, etc., were burning tyres in the street, and they actually burned down the house of the director of the National Park Service on one of the islands. So the situation in these communities became extremely difficult. The fisher folk on the Galapagos are basically, they own the Galapagos, they own the boats, so if they want to shut down the Galapagos, they can shut down the Galapagos within an hour, and they did. So the authorities very much needed to bring some kind of olive branch to the situation that would appease the situation. And so they thought of our project, and so they contacted me and said, yes, we'll give you a chance to come to the Galapagos and do a spay-neuter clinic with the cat and dog populations, because they're a problem for us anyway. We're poisoning them, it's not working, and now we have unrest in the villages itself. Up to that point in the Galapagos, most of the outsiders that had visited the Galapagos were working for the Charles Darwin Research Station, so very much research-based for native species that were living there, not so much social services for the people. And so this project kind of straddled between both. We were working with the cats and dogs, but by sterilizing the cats and dogs, we were protecting the native animals at the same time. Well, the fisher folk knew that they needed to still make a living. So they knew that if tourists wouldn't come, if the cats and dogs were looking, skinny, malnourished, covered in fleas and ticks, broken legs, etc. So they knew that they weren't going to get any tourism dollars if their cat and dog population wasn't healthy either. So all these factors meant that they had to change from fishing the sea cucumbers and taking shark fins and all the other animals that were being sold at high prices to tourism. And actually what was interesting is our spay and neuter projects actually help with that process. So we held the first clinic on Isabella Island in the Galapagos, and it was very well received by the community. Our approach is to become, even though we're outsiders, become part of the community as quickly and effectively as we can. Being quite a humble approach, participating in whatever's going on in the community, whether that be a night of bachata or merengue or a bingo night. We took part. We wanted people to start trusting us because we knew that was the only way that they were going to help and become behind the program. Very quickly, the people realized these services were for them, and collars and leashes became very popular, and people were walking their dogs with collars and leashes. We were holding dog training classes. We were helping people live with their animals rather than the animals being free roaming. So this was a huge change in each community, and it wasn't Animal Balance pushing for this to happen. This was, the communities themselves asking for these services. So the social change actually started to happen in each village on the Galapagos. People were taking responsibility for their cats and dogs. They were getting closer to them, so the relationship between the humans and the cats and dogs changed as they touched them more, as they interacted with them more. Puppies weren't dying at a year or two. Puppies became adults, and that was kind of unusual on the Galapagos at that point because they'd all been killed. And so people were making long-term connections with their dogs, and that did change. So over the course of the last 14 years, this humane animal management plan on the Galapagos Islands has served many different purposes. It's very much to help with the tourism industry because the animals are healthy. It's brought money to the Galapagos, which translates to money to the local people. Since we started doing these projects, we've seen more restaurants open, we've seen more tourist shops open, and people are starting to make different items to sell to the tourists. So it's taken them away from those illegal activities, which were harming endangered species, to actually making a very lucrative living through tourism. So this project doing spaying and neutering not just reduces the cat and dog population to help all species, it also helps humans be able to, particularly on islands, be able to make a better living, because tourists will come to places where the animals are well cared for, because that shows that that community has a high level of compassion and respect for all beings.